Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Schroeder. I'm a social worker by professional distinction. I've got 23 years in the field of social work, with 11 of those being with mental health as a mental health therapist. Today's topic is supporting your child or children, children's mental well-being during the pandemic. When I think about children, and if we think about COVID, we certainly recognize that it has caused many Canadians to change their everyday lives. And for the most part, the majority is following recommendations to reach that goal of sort of flattening that curve. So now we've moved out to phase 1, and some of the directions have been to wear the masks out in public. So in order to flatten that curve or decrease our numbers, we're definitely trying to work in that direction as a whole. And we want to avoid the spike in cases, and that means paying attention to our health services. As a result, we've had to isolate, and that was the initial huge change for everybody. But there's one group of people, little people, that we don't think about in this grand picture of change, and that is children and teens. So for this particular presentation, I'm going to be talking about things that you can watch for, and things that will help and support you as a parent or a caregiver. And I also wanted to include some things from First Nations perspective. I'm First Nations myself. I'm from the Big Stone Cree Nation. And I always like to try to push it in the direction of our people when I'm doing these types of presentations, because we have our own culture and our own way of managing life. And so it's important to try to take the advice from health authorities or from our government to decrease numbers or to decrease those cases so that we don't get sick ourselves, and blend that with some of our traditional ways so that we're not moving away totally from our ways of managing our lives. So in saying that, what I'd like to do is just move on to our presentation, and I'll go through what it is that you're going to be learning. In slide 2, I've got the objectives. That's slide 2. Objectives is an overview of the mental health in children and youth in relation to COVID-19. I'm not specifically going into mental health issues for children, although I recognize that some children may already have a diagnosis of some sort. And of course, if they do, some of these symptoms that I'm going to be talking about, they might be really glaring or might be quite intense. And so, you know, parents or caregivers might be kind of at their wits end and trying to support their youth or child through their mental health. So there is some information at the end of my presentation that will give you some resources. And of course, I talk about more higher risk or higher needs children. And that's the group of children that I'm talking about that may already have a diagnosis of mental health issues, such things as like maybe they're more prone to anxiety, or maybe they suffer with depression. I mean, it's more and more we're seeing kids develop depression quite young. We also recognize that often kids come to mental health therapists psychologists or psychiatrists and doctors with depression or anxiety. And then there's other diagnoses as well that are more inherent. And I'm not going to go into the detail of that because this presentation is specifically about supporting your child through the changes with COVID. But in saying that, please keep in mind that the higher needs or higher risk children with any previous mental health diagnosis, you might want to kind of pay attention to those slides at the end for resources, and reaching out to mental health professionals near your community. Now that we're able to get out and about, I think most organizations are starting to open their doors again. So the resources are becoming a little bit easier to access. So point 2 is keeping my child mentally well during the pandemic. So that's my objective, is to give you an overview of children and how it impacts them, how COVID impacts them, and then what you can do to help them maintain a healthy mental well-being. And then, of course, right at the end is the resources. So when I think about COVID, it has certainly created a lot of uncertainty and changing circumstances that makes for difficult times in our First Nations communities and various other communities, but in particular our First Nations communities, partly because we don't have as many resources on our reserves. We're getting there, though. I will say, like, there's a lot of communities that have health centers. So those are the resources that I'm talking about. Is sometimes the bands will bring in a psychologist attached to the medical health services building. So we are getting there for sure. As I go back to the slide, we are especially vulnerable with the threat of this virus. It's likely that you may experience some mental distress at some point during this crisis, which can take a lot of toll on your mental health. And then when we think about what that does for parents as we go through our own distress, and then we're having to think about our kids, it can be a little overwhelming. A few weeks ago, I did a presentation on anxiety, and then last week it was stress management. So I'd encourage you to go to Treaty 8 Facebook page, and you can play those at your leisure, and they'll give you some helpful information on how to support yourself during this huge change within our societies. As First Nations people, we have a strong history of resilience and strength. Many nations look to take care of themselves by ensuring all aspects of body, mind, spirit, and emotions. That is to attain overall health and well-being. We have many cultural strengths to draw upon to stay connected and to keep well, even while we practice social distancing. In First Nations culture, our children are our future, and we all take care of the children. When I think of our children, we often will have aunts and uncles and cookums and Muslims part of caring for the children. And then I do that myself as a cookum. I'm a cookum as well, and so oftentimes I take the little people into my home and keep them for sometimes days, or in one case, I've got a teenager living with me that really has connected to Cookum and Muslim and wants to finish high school living with us while still maintaining a relationship with her parents. They are always close, and we often teach them by modeling. That's our traditional way, modeling, showing them how we do things. When we take them out on the land, we show them. It's not by them reading instructions on something. It's more a hands-on showing. When we connect in this way with our children, we create a sense of hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. On slide 3, I'm going to go into mental health in children and youth in relation to COVID. Now, when I think about COVID, let's stop and think about that for a moment. When we think about the impacts of that on children, their whole lives have been disrupted. They are no longer going to physical school. They've had to adjust to new ways of getting their education, either through homeschooling. Some are online learning, and some are using, like this. The schools have been quite creative. They've been using various technology to continue that learning at home, which is wonderful in terms of supporting our kids' education. But the other piece that comes into play is that it's left up to the parents to ensure that your kid is logging in, or they're sitting down and they're going through, the list of homework or assignments in their Google Meet classroom, if that's what your particular, I know in this community, that's generally what they're using is Google Meets. So when we think even about that for a fact, like if we consider that, that's a huge change. So mums and dads or uncles or aunties or cookums or muslims having to get used to using an online tool to support the young people's education. And then the young people having to adjust to that and being able to know that they have to schedule time in and it has to be done. Sometimes for little ones, especially in ECS to, let's say, grade 3 or even 4 or 5, it's really hard for them to sit and want to do that homework. So, parents are finding ways of managing that. Maybe they're doing 2 assignments in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, or they're kind of spreading it over. But definitely, it's a huge change. Also for children, when we think about this major change that COVID has brought upon them, is that ability to socialize with their friends, to hang out, to go to the park, to maybe get involved in extracurricular stuff from the schools or from the communities, like playing soccer or going to in our community we have boxing, and that's been shut down. All of those extracurricular things have been stopped, and so when it stops, boom, that routine is taken away from the child or the youth or the teen, and so that's a huge shift for them. And the big one, especially for teens or early preteens, is that disconnection from their friends. Now, we don't really think, maybe we not really never stop to consider the change that they're going through for little people, but it's as huge as our change as well. The added piece there for them is that uncertainty, like what's going to happen? Is it going to come out? Is COVID going to take over our communities? And am I going to lose a loved one, or am I going to lose my family? So those are worrisome thoughts, especially with kids that are worriers. And there are a lot of kids that are worriers that have anxiety. So they might be grappling with some of those thoughts. Like, what does COVID mean? Does it mean that I'm going to get sick? Does it mean that my mom is going to get sick? What does this mean? So it's stressful for them as much as it is stressful for adults. So we need to consider what's going on for them as well. Isolating as a result of COVID to keep our children's physical health has resulted in a very different world in which they were not used to. You know, we've gotten into phase one, and we're able to maybe get out a little bit more with our families, but they're still recommending, you know, social distancing. So, you know, being able to play in the playgrounds or re-engage with boxing or soccer, that's still not open. And you know, so there's still lots of things that are still keeping kids away from their friends, away from those things that they used to love to do. And I know that kids love to be active. So when that's taken away, there's a lot of confusion that might come about for them. The addition there too with phase one is schools are not going to return, at least in my area. They're thinking maybe September, but they want to see how the phasing of the reopening is going to impact everybody. So we're still kind of left in with a big question mark over our heads and wondering, what does this mean for our kids? There may be children or young people in your life who experience distress. As a trusted adult, you can help reassure and educate them about COVID. It can be it can be good to talk to them now so that they can understand the illness and be reassured. If you feel the child or young person is getting distressed through this conversation, reassure them, provide accurate information, and provide strategies on ways to manage their feelings. So, such things as acknowledging what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. Don't try to squash it. It's important for them to bring it up and bring it out and be able to hear a trusted adult say, "You're sad," or "You're worried." And I understand, you know, I was worried when we first were told that we had to stay at home and we're getting all these news reports. It was a scary time for everybody. So I realize for you that it's a very scary time for you as well. But we're here as a family. We're here to protect you and keep you safe. And we're going to make sure that you stay healthy by practicing good hand hygiene. And when we go out, we're going to try to use those masks. And we're going to limit our time out in the public. But we're going to do other things at home to keep us busy, to keep us grounded, and to help you to relax and feel like you can let your guard down, because nothing's going to happen in our household if we manage our health accordingly, if we take the time to manage our health. Two very important starting points to support your little people during these times, in my professional opinion, would be exactly that: open communication and watching for changes in behavior. Sometimes the changes are quite glaring, and sometimes there's small changes in their behaviors that could signal they are struggling. When we think about this for a moment and we clarify changes, I'm speaking about such behaviors that would be out of the ordinary for your child. So changes that really stand out, that you never saw your child react in that way. Those are the types of things that you want to zero in. And maybe you're making dinner when it happens, but you need to make a mental note, and you need to say to maybe the child or youth is, "Hey, something's going on for you. We need to talk about this after we have supper or after it's quiet time." Because it's really important to open the door of communication and reassure our kids that they are safe and that they're going to be okay. The community is looking after them. For some parents, you might see telltale indicators, or I like to call it almost like a thermometer of child's behavior. So such things as one for my little guy years ago. I won't. I'm a cookum, so he's a grown man. But back when he was in grade one or ECS, it was when he was troubled about something. When he got picked up from school, he'd say, something happened, and then you try to talk to him and he shuts down. Well, I knew that was not for him in particular, that was not the time to talk about it. But guaranteed, before he closed his eyes, there was a conversation, and he was the one that would, I would wait for him, because I knew after a while this was his makeup. This was his telltale sign of something was bothering him. He'd say, "Mom, this kid in school," and then blah blah blah. He'd let it out of the bag, and we'd talk about it, and then he could fall asleep because he was reassured, and we come up with a problem solving plan that we could, or he could use, or perhaps maybe it meant, I had to be involved a little bit more. But as parents, we kind of know those telltale signs. For example, sometimes kids will become more clingy or whiny, or they don't want to let you out of their sight. And that's usually an indicator sometimes something is going through their minds, their little minds, and it's time to maybe sit down and have a conversation and talk to them. Offer them lots of love and affection during that time. You wanna acknowledge what they're saying. You wanna reaffirm what they're saying, and you wanna allow them to express whatever emotions that might be there. Sometimes some kids will come across as being angry, while other kids will be bursting into tears as soon as you offer them that opportunity to begin a conversation. So as parents, I know that most of us know our kids quite well. So listen to that gut instinct that you have as a parent, and also those telltale signs of your child, those things that they typically will gravitate towards when they're experiencing trouble or worry, or they're not quite sure of things, and so they don't know how to approach you. Well, sometimes we have to listen to or watch for those behaviors, and we have to be the ones to open the door of communication for them. For other parents, they may not see that type of behavior in their child, but perhaps it is still out of the ordinary behaviors. That is the key message here, is kind of those out of ordinary behaviors. So our kids will function day to day, and you kind of know their personalities, and how they carry themselves throughout the day. But when there's an out of the ordinary behavior, then it's time to really pay attention. Another example of that would be getting easily upset, perhaps. Like I said, for those kids that are younger, let's say toddlers to 9 years old, those whining, those tired. We know when they're tired. Lots of times, kids, that's when their stuff will start to spill out. When they're frustrated, that ability to keep it kind of inside of them when they're tired is a big challenge. So then it'll come out. For our teenagers or our early preteens, reactions might be seen different. Such things as frustrations or talking back, or maybe throwing things, throwing a pillow and say, "I hate this place, I'm so damn bored," or they get fighting maybe with their younger siblings. That's another indicator too. Like the family is stressed, and that this is a very normal response to an abnormal situation. Um, all families are stressed. All families are going through various degrees of this type of response, some more intense than others, but you're not alone. This is very common, very normal for an abnormal situation. COVID is an abnormal situation. We don't get pandemics every day, so it's very abnormal. It's sort of like the wildfires in Alberta. Those were abnormal events, and people got uh, they were told to leave their communities and had to stay out for long periods of time, and they've lost a lot of things. Those are abnormal situations, and with abnormal situations we react as human beings, and it's important to listen to what you're feeling yourself as a parent, but also listen to your kids. Give them time to talk. Give them the invitation to be able to talk, and offer some advice and some words of encouragement and some strategies, which, I mean, there's many things that we can do as parents, and you're going to see that as we go through the slide, and you're going to go, these are just normal things. Absolutely, they're normal things to do. But we forget about those things when we're going through an abnormal situation. We tend to go, well, now what do I do? But really and truly, we have the resiliency, we have the skills within us as parents. So absolutely, you're going to, and then for some other things, you're going to go, wow, I didn't think about that. But yeah, there's lots of things that we can do to support our kids' worries about COVID and what that means for them, and the changes, the big changes that they've had to experience: loss of friendship, loss of socializing, loss of classroom, physical classrooms. When you think about this too, in terms of ages and stages, like for all kids, they're missing out on those opportunities that they would find in a physical classroom. So it's a difficult time, and it's difficult, but it's also an opportunity to throw that time of difficulty into something that is going to be very positive for the family. And where I go with that is I flip it, and I try to find things that we can do as family that will make great memories, or the kids will always remember that, because during COVID we went off on the land and we did this and this, things that they might not have had time for when they were attending school, physical school. So there's a glimpse right into the strategies right there. On the next slide 4, I'm going to go into some of those strategies. So keeping my child mentally well during the pandemic, I think it's important for us to stay calm. Children look to us for how to respond to stressful situations. Remember, you being calm helps your child to remain calm. Think about ways to manage the stress that you might be carrying. Talking with a friend, going for a walk, focusing on gratitude, maybe going to Treaty 8 Urban Facebook page and opening up the stress management slides that I did earlier, or the coping and managing with anxiety during COVID. Those are some tools there, and there's some within those presentations. I've also given some short little videos that you can watch that will be helpful, and maybe even just flip the switch a little bit and help you to relax, so that you're not feeling so stressed. In particular, I'm thinking about Gaber Mate, who is a doctor, psychology, and his background is on trauma and mostly with youth and children. And so this article that he wrote is, to me, very, very powerful. And it's like, if you read that, you're going to be able to say, take a one step back and sort of breathe and calm a little bit. So there's lots of resources in the website, Facebook page for Treaty 8. As I said, there's some previous presentations that I've done that they posted there. In addition to that, they're going to be posting a list of tools that I've created. You'll see that on the page as well. I don't know when that'll be up and posted, but I anticipate that they'll have that up fairly soon. Okay, so getting back to calm, thinking about ways to manage stress. You want to be calm. You want to be at your best when you're supporting your children. So being able to maintain calm, like deep breathing as you get into that open invitation to have a conversation with them. You want to kind of ground yourself, grab a cup of tea, take some deep breaths, and then you've got skills as a parent. Trust yourself and let the conversation begin, and you'll see where it takes you. You can go back to the slides here and maybe grab some ideas to help you with that conversation and come up with a problem solving management plan, if you want to call it that, or come up with ways that you can support your child, develop a plan with them. So again, you want to pause and take a deep breath before speaking with your child. You want to keep it simple, so you want to make it age appropriate. Now, for me, I'm using some big words in this presentation, but for all intents and purposes, when we're talking to our kids, we want to talk not down to them, but we want to use their language and their where they're functioning at, their ability to understand. So don't overwhelm them, don't make it complex. There's a lot of information that's coming out everywhere. You only want to take information from resources that are reputable, so such things as WHO or Canadian Mental Health, all of which I've included in this at the end of the slides and that other handout that's going to be posted on the Treaty 8 page. So those are resources for you that are reputable sites. You can help your child by breaking it down into more manageable parts and focusing on the things that are most important to them, because they're very unique little people. So what one child might see as important, the other one may not. But it's really important to listen to them individually and try to support them individually. For example, reminding them that they are safe, explaining that cancellations are happening to help keep them and others in the community safe, telling them that by washing their hands regularly, they are helping everyone, such things as that. Having some language to help them to understand the situation that you can repeat in a calm way. Those are things that will help them. And also, the next skill is to listen. Let your child talk through how they are feeling. Acknowledge those emotions and help to label them. You can say such things as, yes, I can see that you're feeling worried, or I can see that you're feeling scared, or it is okay to feel angry that you can't see grandma or your friends right now. Some children may not easily talk about their feelings or have the vocabulary to identify and label different feelings. If you're noticing different behavior, as I said, you can say, I wonder if you might be feeling worried or sad, and what might help you to feel better. Keep information, as I said, age appropriate. Answer their questions as factually as possible, but keep responses age appropriate. Balance the facts with reassurance. Your child needs to know that they and you are safe. That's the big one for kids. And then again, one of the things that I've been saying over and over in my presentations is limit exposure. Avoid listening to or watching news coverage about the pandemic with young children around. Even some of the teens that tend to be worriers, if they have anxiety and they worry, then limit watching those news coverages around them as well. Avoid having adult conversations about your worries in front of your children. So leave that for after they've gone to sleep and you know that their little ears are closed. And then you have that conversation with adults or your partner, and you talk about your own worries. And again, when I think about worries and anxiety, please use that presentation on stress management and the other one on anxiety that is on that Facebook page for Treaty 8 Urban Office. Encourage older children to be aware of their social media. Yeah, that's a big one. It's so hard to get teens to sort of pull away from devices. But ask them to take breaks. And here's the thing, like as we get into this in a few slides, you're going to see that there's ways that we can manage the amount of time they have on social media. And that's through our cultural ways. Help them to think critically about what they are reading online, sorting out myths from facts, because there's a lot of garbage out there as well. Again, you might want to direct them to those reputable sites that I've been talking about. If they're kids that are old beyond their years, I have a little grandson that I swear we call him an old soul because he's just like a little Muslim, and the stuff that comes out of him is just wow. But I can see him as a teenager being way beyond his years, and maybe in his case, you could have a frank conversation with him. You might have a child of the same kind of personality, but be careful to ensure that you're checking in about worry and anxiousness with them as well. Don't believe that, they're strong, just do that gentle check-in with them. It sends a message that you care. It sends a message that you love them and that you're there for them. And that's really important for kids. Try to establish a flexible routine for your child. This might include regular but relaxed time for walking and sleeping, and perhaps for meals and snacks. Some parents will be working from home and may have new opportunities to connect with their child during the day. And some are at home because work has stopped completely. So playing and talking together can help everyone feel more relaxed. This can take some planning at first while you look through working out your new schedules or your new routines. Watch for those natural moments when you can just be together and follow your child's lead. Those are golden nuggets of opportunity, and you can get some really good headway with kids when you have that type of an opportunity. So watch for those and dive in and have an open conversation with them. Be patient and understanding. You may notice behavior changes in your child. Children react differently, as I said, to change and in their routine and also to stress. As I said before, those changes might include frustration, getting frustrated more easily, or being overly emotional. Um, they might even regress. Some kids might go to engaging in things that they did at a much younger age. So sometimes when I think about that, like for 4-year-olds, they might start to suck their thumb, or they gravitate to those things that they used to do as a little person. And when you think about it, that's a glaring flag, right? Because it's telling you, hey, something's wrong. They obviously worried. It's time for me to kind of give them that attention, to be able to explore with them what's worrying them, and to give them some encouragement and communication that they are going to be safe, that you're going to make sure that they're safe. Um, Being calm and reassuring them is the best thing that you can do when you see that type of behavior occurring, rather than being a disciplinarian, meaning, you get angry with them for sucking their thumb. Open the door to have a conversation. What's worrying you? I notice that you're sucking your thumb. And so sometimes, when kids start to suck their thumb again, you used to do that when you were 1 years old and up to 2 years old, but you've gotten a little older, you've stopped. So when we see that as parents, we kind of wonder, what's bothering you? Let's talk. Tell me what's wrong, and use age appropriate lingo as you engage with them in a conversation. Bedwetting could be another sign too. When we think about those changes in behaviors, be aware of that as well. Although bedwetting can also be an indicator of something else, I think that it's really either way. If a child is starting to wet the bed again, you need to have a conversation with them. Um, and then from a First Nations point of view, when I think about things about flipping the switch and taking this COVID experience to something more positive, I think about things such as wanting to create great memories. So flipping it, making this a positive rather than a negative. So this is the time to engage in such things as, I know when I was a kid, I used to just, oh my God, this was the best time in the world for me, was storytelling, sitting on the floor and listening to my mom tell our cultural stories. And if you're not sure of some of the stories, maybe ask an elder in your community if they will tell stories, or you can even you can find lots of books actually on some of those stories that our grandparents memorized from when they were kids, and then our parents memorized and passed down, because we didn't have books when I was a kid. It was all from oral stories from my cookum that she told my mom and her brothers, and then mom told us, and my dad also told us some stories. So when I think about Wasakicha stories, oh my gosh, I just love those stories. And we'd have time for giggling and laughing, and it was a really good quality time with the family. And this is an opportunity to create that in our communities again. We're kind of blocked from society to a great degree. So let's use our cultural ways to support ourselves. We have the skills, and those skills give us a lot of resilience. We're going to bounce back from this. So you want to maybe learn and share traditional knowledge. So things such as learning outdoor survival skills, this is where I was talking about teens and being on their devices and media. So when you get them outside and you're teaching them things about living on the land or surviving on the land, you actually pull them away from those devices, and you can make it very, very interesting. Um, you know, maybe a little bit of hunting or fishing, or maybe you want to share your knowledge about the plants and the animals and land around you, or talk about the land around you. Where did the land, where did people live years ago? There's lots of things that we can do when we're out on, sorry, excuse me, on the land, having a fire, having some bush tea. Um, you can bring marshmallows. I mean, those are not typical traditional foods, but you could maybe bring some marshmallows, roast marshmallows, or have a lunch out there. What a great opportunity to have a lunch. Kids love that, and so do the teens. The other thing that I noticed with teenagers was the hunting part. When they went out hunting with their Muslim or their uncle or their dad, um, they killed an animal, and they were able to be taught how to skin and quarter, and then perhaps maybe even teaching them if you wanted to make um, dry the meat, or maybe you want to catch fish and you want to dry fish. Those are things that we can pass to our kids that we want to keep within our nations. We want to be able to pass those cultural things down to our kids so that they have a sense of who they are and have a sense of pride of who they are. And this is what we do as First Nations people. Then the other thing that you might include, and I'm very aware that there are a lot of First Nations people that that are Christians, that have gone to Christianity, and that's okay. So opportunities maybe for teachings about Christianity in your church and your Bible studies. That might be something that you want to share with your child. And for other families that have stayed connected maybe to the traditional ways of things, such as sweat lodges and so forth. So incorporating ceremony, teaching the children how to smudge every morning, maybe doing sunrise ceremony, um, and check in with others to reaffirm your love and relationships. These are great opportunities for that. When I think about sitting, if you're talking about Christianity, you're talking about relationships and love and family. These are great opportunities to express that. And that's true for ceremony through smudging every morning. You have a bit of a quiet time, a little bit of meditation time, but it's also, you could do a pass the rock or pass the feather, and you have a conversation. Each child has a time to say something about, and you can lead it. You can say, let's talk about our day ahead. What would you like to see done today? And they pass the rock or pass the feather around. Those are great opportunities for families to get tighter and closer to one another. Kind words and thoughtful gestures will definitely help. Use non-physical ways to show love to people while practicing social distancing. Um, and I think the other area when I think about our traditional ways is, what about our songs, and our language? This is a great opportunity to teach our kids our language and the songs that we we have within our communities or within our families, songs that are passed down. So, have some time where you sit and maybe you teach a couple of words of our language, or maybe it's a full sentence that you teach. And then again, the traditional songs when you're smudging, maybe that's something one of the kids will say, well, or you could say, would you like to learn a traditional song? And so you begin those songs, teaching those songs. Integrate life skills into supporting your kids at home and in helping them to stay calm and helping that well-being. Integrating life skills would be a great opportunity. And I'm going to tell you right at the end when I get through this little piece here, what exactly you're doing from a professional standpoint, what I see is happening if you engage in some of these strategies to support your kids. So again, teaching young ones how to do daily chores, such as maybe they take the garbage out, or they do some yard work, or they do some cooking. Teaching them how to make bannock. They love to do that. Or baking. Children will learn so much through play and are especially happy when their parents and caregivers join in the fun. It just seems to be so much more fun when an adult engages in an activity with kids. So great opportunities for supporting your child's mental well-being and also passing down some traditions, as well as making great memories and strengthening the family unit. You want to also model self-awareness and mindfulness. So for adults, think about checking in with your body, scan your body, name where you are carrying your feelings. If you're feeling a little distressed in the day, what is it? Where are you carrying it? Sometimes people will carry it in their shoulders. They have, their necks or shoulders get tight. So doing some deep breathing and checking in and scanning your body throughout the day for your well-being as well as your child's well-being, because when we pay attention to caring for ourselves and we manage our stress, then of course how we interact with our kids is going to be from a standpoint of being calm and supportive, and that's what kids need right now. So again, I'm going to redirect you back to the anxiety and the stress management presentations for some great tools in those two presentations. When we think about traditional ways, and I know our Kokums and Muslims have taught us that a lot of times that, when we're wanting to rid our bodies of some negative energy, we can let it down in the land. So we can, put it in the land, or we can have a mental sort of visual where you're taking maybe anger or frustration. Let's make that red, and we're gonna put it into Mother Earth, and she's going to recycle it, and she's going to bring it up into something really positive, such as the trees, or maybe it's going to be something that's berries, something that we can eat. So flipping things around. So those are some strategies using traditional and cultural ways, and also some ways through like a mental health perspective. And what I wanted to say was that when you engage in this from my standpoint, when we engage in any of those activities, traditional activities, and we're doing it to redirect our emotions that are maybe not quite positive. They're maybe we're worried or we're anxious. When we engage in something, we're actually redirecting, and that's one tool that I often work and teach clients to do, and that's uh, flipping the switch and moving to something more positive. And so we redirect, we refocus so that we can let the worrisome thought go away. If we have no control over that worry, if we have no way to solve that particular issue, which we don't right now, as most of us, we're not researchers, we're not doctors, so we have no ability to cure that COVID-19. And so, it's created a lot of stress and a lot of worry, and it's taken a lot from our beings. So it's important to try to redirect those worrisome things and move to something more positive. Okay, so on the next slide, keeping my team mentally well during the pandemic. I think I've talked quite a bit about that on the previous slide, but there are a few things that I think I'd like to add when we think about teenagers. And they are a challenge because they're little, they're not little people, they're often sometimes taller. I know my teen is taller than me. So being patient and understanding. Think back to when you were a teen and how important your social connections were, and likely still are. That's a huge shift for teens, being cut off from their friends. So teens are dealing with less social contact, and there's been a lot of canceled events for them. This can be upsetting. Try to be patient and understanding. Try not to minimize their feelings. Instead, listen and express with compassion and love. Encourage balance. Some teens may turn to Netflix, social media, or gaming as a distraction from the day-to-day reality of social distancing. This is to be expected, and you may also find you're looking for distractions yourself. So taking breaks from screen time is helpful. And I gave you some strategies there, to sort of pull them away from devices by doing some of our cultural teachings. Plus, too much social media exposure can have a negative impact on mental health. When I think about the teen that lives with me, when she gets caught up with some sites, she can become quite anxious, and she'll come in and she'll say, I seen this, I had an ache, and she looked it up on the media. So then she's creating a lot of extra anxiety, extra stress. Had she just left it alone and maybe talked to me, and if it was bad, obviously I would seek medical attention, or I might even have an answer for her to be able to help her. But that's an example of the negative impact on mental health. For her, she is a worrier, so impacts on her mental health. We have to be careful on how much she's engaging in that social media or looking up information online. It's a good idea for all of us to prioritize wellness as much as possible at this time. Try to encourage regular sleep habits. You could invite your teen to get outside for daily walks with you or do some cooking together. Being very physical also helps for improving the sleep routine. Like if we're outdoors and we're running or walking, we tend to have a better sleep. So when I think about traditionally, if we go out on the land, chances are, and you sat around a fire, oh my gosh, chances are you're going to have a really good sleep that night. And that's true for the teenagers as well. When you engage in a conversation with them, you want to pause before talking. With so much news coverage and talk about COVID-19, overexposure is very possible. And you can provide a break for your teen by not discussing the situation in front of them unless they want to talk about it. Listen and provide reassurance when you can. Some teens may be worried about the health of their friends and family members, about the size of the pandemic locally or globally, or about lost class time and their ability to complete courses. If they express concerns to you, listen to their concerns and try to provide reassurance. You can talk about measures that are in place to keep people safe, how you've prepared as a family, and how life will return to normal. For teens who are concerned about lost class time and completing courses, reassure them that school staff understand and appreciate their concern. So sometimes just connecting with a teacher through mail, or when they have the Google Meets, and talking to the teacher, hey, I'm worried about being able to complete my courses. Can we set up some time to talk one-on-one? Or you don't even have to say completing courses. Maybe, Mr. Smith, can I set up some time to talk to you by telephone after our Google Meet? And then, encourage them to talk openly about their worries in completing courses. Tell them more information will come and you'll work it through together. As we go through this pandemic, we're learning that the phases and stages of COVID have been, you get a bunch of information and then there's another worry. So then it'll come. We have to be just patient about that. When I think about the face masks in particular, we had kind of differing information that was coming out. Now they're saying it's a good idea to wear them in public. So that's what I mean about more information will come. I guess the biggest message that you can provide to your teen is that you'll work it through together and you're there for them. Now, when I think about the next slide, when I think about sometimes some kids, usually when they respond with more intense emotions or potential risk, these probably are the kids that have an underlying mental health issue. So, you might have, before COVID, you might have been dealing with some challenges prior to COVID. So with COVID, this is an added weight on those individual youth. And so it's really important, again, to pay attention to them and ensure that they have the supports that they need and there's a plan in place so that if it gets too much of a bubbling pot that's starting to kind of bubble over on the stove, then there's resources that you can reach out to. So I'm going to go through this particular information on this slide, responding to more intense emotions or potential risk. So it can be very challenging to talk about mental health. Sometimes parents, like others, avoid the conversation because they don't know how to start, or they worry that they might put thoughts into their child's head that had not been there. And as a result, will make things worse. That's far from the truth. If you ever take any training on suicide risk, and you will learn that that is a myth. In fact, opening the doors to discuss potential risk actually provides the person maybe that's experiencing that with a sense of relief, because, oh, finally, I can talk about this and I can let it out. Research tells us that it's not the case, that you don't put things in a child or teen or even an adult's mind. You actually end up creating an opportunity for them to breathe a sigh of release. Bringing up worries, concerns, changes in behavior, etc., with your child will open the lines of communication rather than worsen the situation. Here are some tips to help you talk to your child about their mental health. Find a quiet time when you are unlikely to have any interruptions to begin the conversation. Reassure them that they can tell you anything and you will not get angry with them, even if you get scared. Start the conversation with describing changes you have noticed in their mood or behavior or their reactions, such things as, I've noticed that you seem to be crying more. If you had conversations with your child's teachers about concerns, include comments from the teacher's observations. And I say that because a lot of teachers are still having connection with kids through the Google Meet, and sometimes they're having FaceTime meetings as well, which is primarily the same thing, but so they may observe some changes with the youth, and they might get a hold of you and say, hey, I just noticed this, or so-and-so said this in our Google Meet. So again, communicating that I've noticed you to be crying and your teacher has observed some other behaviors that they're worried about you. Share that you wonder about how your child might be feeling and what they might be thinking, what they might be worried about. And you can do this. An example would be, I wonder if you're feeling sad about losing your friend Sam because of COVID and you haven't been able to spend one-on-one time with them. Allow your child time to reflect before they answer. Stay calm and don't abandon the conversation. If your child responds with nothing is wrong, leave me alone. If this happens, reassure your child that you are there for them. Give your child some time and then try again later. If your child tells you anything that makes you worried, such things as suicide thoughts, overwhelming anxiety, self-injurious behavior like cutting, reassure them that you are glad that they told you and you will be there for them and help them along the way, and you will support them in finding some ways of coping and managing with the difficult feelings that they're experiencing. Add that sometimes parents do not have all the answers, and just like when we get physically ill, we reach out to a doctor. In this case, we reach out to a person that is an expert in handling difficult emotions, such as what they are experiencing. And that would be mental health therapist or psychologist, a medical doctor. Those are the professionals that you would be seeking. So you will be helping them find the right professional for them by exploring in your community through your medical services, or if they have an angst in going to see someone through your medical services, maybe you can find a resource in the next neighboring community. Let them know that you are there for them and you're going to see it through with them all the way. You're going to attend those appointments. You can sit outside if they want privacy with the therapist, but you're going to be attending alongside them. That, again, sends a message that you care, that you love them, and you want to support them. Teens need that. So that's the information on anything to do with potential risk. And then as I look at a review or summary, I guess I want to say that children react to stress differently than adults. They may withdraw or behave in more babyish ways. So they might regress. Some might be anxious or clingy. They might be preoccupied with this illness as well, and they might start drawing pictures They might even have problems with sleep or nightmares. They may get physical symptoms such as stomach aches, so their tummies are hurting, or they have headaches. Um, Again, in summary, you want to reassure them that they are safe, encourage them to talk about how they feel, tell them they can ask questions and answer these in plain language appropriate to their age. Be honest, but avoid details which may distress them further or cause more anxiety. Tell them that feeling upset or afraid is normal, even though this is not something that we've dealt with before. It's still, as human beings, this is a normal response to an abnormal situation. You're not going to use those words, but just let them know that, yeah, you know what? Most people are feeling something over COVID. This is very, very normal, but I'm going to help you work it through. Let's find some ways to make you feel better. Be understanding. They may have problems sleeping. They may throw tantrums or wet the bed. Be patient and reassuring if this happens. With support and care, it will pass. Give your child extra love and attention. Remember that children look to their parents to feel safe and to know how to respond. Reassure them. Share that you are upset too, but that you know you will be all fine together. Try to keep normal routines. So looking at meal times being the same time each day, bedtime routine, very important to keep that routine, because when we have routines for kids, it actually sends a message that they're safe. I mean, this is odd. They don't actually think this, but in studies, we've certainly recognized that when we have routine within a home, that kids tend to function and can cope with more because they feel safe in their environment. Allow them to get out and play, to go for a walk, etc. Getting out on the land, like I said. Help your kids feel in control. Encourage frequent hand washing. Avoid touching their faces. Teach them how to cover a cough and a sneeze, and also to practice that social physical distancing. Young people, particularly adolescents, may feel the need to meet up with their peers as a way to avoid boredom or to manage their emotions. Talk to your teenager about social distancing and what that looks like, why it's necessary, and identify other ways of socially connecting with their friends through FaceTime or video chats, or maybe they can spend an hour playing a video game such as Minecraft. You can log in from different sites, but be in that same game together. It's a way of staying and feeling connected to their friends. However, if a child's distress is escalating or they are displaying any worrying behaviors, such as extreme withdrawal, terror that you cannot comfort them from, seek help early. Check with your local health center if there is a way to access some supports online, and or if your child can see a mental health specialist in the community or within the outlying communities. The big message again that I want to add is know that this will end, and that's something that you need to tell them. Right now, the pandemic may feel endless, but we need to remind ourselves and our kids that it will end. Although we do not know the specific timeline, the need for social distancing, closures, and the life changes we are currently experiencing, they're not permanent. Knowing this makes it much easier to cope. And I want to end on, at the end of the slides, there's a notation about resources. And as I said, the resources are going to be put up on the Facebook page of Treaty 8 Urban Office. So please go there for those resources. There's some videos, there's just some helpful tools as well that a person can access. So as we end today's presentation, from a First Nations perspective, I wanted to do a teaching, and the teaching is about Muskwa. Uh, Muskwa, to me, is going to help us to understand the COVID-19 crisis and what we're going through. When a bear goes into hibernation, they do it for health of their community and themselves. In the winter, food is scarce. Hibernating allows other animals to have access to the limited resources. It slows the spread of disease and viruses among other animals during a season when immune systems are lower and energy is limited. It is also a time of conserving health for the bear, a time of reflection. It is a time that allows you to renew, to undergo change, to honor your place in life and food cycles. It is not a time for anxiety or fear. When it is time for hibernation, a bear can finally relax. All of the stress of finding food, territory, and mate partners disappears. The bear believes that they have done enough and trusts themselves. They know this process is necessary and they will come out of it the other side renewed. Be the bear, stay home, rest, know you are doing this for something much bigger than yourself. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Sandra Schroeder. If you wanted to reach me directly to have any conversation about this particular presentation, or if you go in and view any of the others, you certainly can do that through Treaty 8 Urban Office. You can leave a message there and I will get messages to call you back directly. I hope you have a wonderful day and I hope this has been helpful for you. Hi.